Addiction isn't just a human weakness, it's a business model. All of our lives we have been taught to think about addiction as something dark and deeply personal. A battle that people go through where they are forced to take on their strongest impulses. Where they are forced to stop doing the things they want to do most because those very things are harming their lives. While the average person sees addiction as something deep and destructive, many businesses see it as a weakness that can be exploited and monetized. In fact, entire industries are built solely on this business model. These industries prey on people's habits and cravings in order to create repeat customers. Somewhere along the way, companies realize something powerful. Dependency is predictable, and predictability is extremely profitable. Addiction didn't just become a multi-billion-dollar industry by accident. It became one by choice. Strategic decisions were made to design products and services to keep people hooked and dependent so companies could grow and make billions of dollars. This is the story of the addiction business and how this business impacts the modern world. Addiction didn't just suddenly become profitable overnight. It all started with companies slowly realizing over the span of decades that the most valuable customer wasn't the one who bought once, but the one who couldn't stop coming back. And the easiest way to create a customer base that can't stop coming back is to create a business model that feeds off the addictive nature of humans. Of course, at first, this wasn't framed as exploitation. It was framed as an opportunity. An opportunity to maximize profit and turn customer behavior into something predictable and repeatable. Many companies made the decision that they were going to create products that people always feel the need to return to so that they could build a business that never stops growing and one that customers could never walk away from. This decision may seem simple, but underneath the surface was something far more sinister. Companies began studying the mechanics of addiction. They began studying the psychology of anticipation, reward, and repetition so that they could design products that were so engaging to consumers that once they tried them, they would instantly become hooked. One of the earliest examples of this was the tobacco industry. Tobacco companies like Philip Morris realized early on that the addictive chemicals contained in their products would be the perfect way to create consumers who couldn't stop returning to their product. Previously hidden Philip Morris internal documents revealed that not only was nicotine addictive, it was the blueprint for their entire business. And it has clearly been effective as there are now entire generations of cigarette smokers who have been repeat customers for the entirety of their lives. But tobacco companies weren't the only ones using addiction as a business model. Once the effectiveness of this model was understood, entire industries began using addiction as a strategy. Once companies understood the value of dependency and how it could be engineered to drive revenue, the next step was to turn it into a scalable system. So they began building products around predictable behaviors. Products were designed to capitalize off of feelings like excitement, joy, and even comfort, so that returning to these products felt natural, easy, and eventually automatic. And this was a winning formula that was repeated across many different industries. Casinos get people hooked by creating a sense of excitement around the possibility of winning big money. Every spin on a machine feels like a chance to change your financial situation. The repetitive and endless nature of those spins becomes comforting and almost second nature. And when you do win big money, the sense of joy from the reward is so satisfying that it keeps you coming back for more. Fast food chains create instantly recognizable food items that are designed to instantly trigger pleasure. The salt, sugar, fat, and other chemicals are all optimized to deliver flavors that are easy to crave and ultimately keep you coming back. The flavors feel familiar, comforting, and reliable, turning a simple meal into a lifelong habit. Mobile games are no different. They give you feelings of excitement and joy by giving you digital rewards the more you play the game. And you must continuously play the game as well as put money into it in order to keep up with all of the other players in the game and continue receiving more of these rewards. And this cycle continues until it begins to feel less like playing a game and more like a constant part of your everyday routine. When you analyze all of these industries that utilize addiction as a business strategy, you notice a clear and simple pattern. Companies triggering predictable human emotions to drive revenue. And this pattern is repeated again and again, from social media platforms to streaming services to sports betting. This was no longer about understanding addiction as many companies had claimed during the research phase. This was about building reliable systems that made addictive behavior scalable. Systems designed to keep people engaged longer, returning more often, and spending more money. And once companies realized this was a winning strategy, the momentum couldn't be stopped. Once addictive behavior finally became scalable and reliable, companies realized they had now unlocked a truly efficient business model. Addicted customers behave in ways that make both revenue and growth very predictable. They return and spend in consistent intervals, and this allows companies to know exactly how much they can expect to earn from these customers over a period of time. They also require far less money to be poured into marketing products to them in order to keep them engaged as they are already hooked. This means that companies can use most of their ad spend to reach new customers and get them hooked as well. This created a perfect business model for these companies. As customers keep coming back without needing many reminders in the form of marketing, they rarely leave once hooked, they have predictable spending patterns, and the more people that a company is able to hook, the more they are able to grow. And companies continue to optimize their profits from this by analyzing and tracking specific metrics. Some examples of metrics that companies track are time spent, return frequency, drop-off points, and reward responsiveness. These metrics are all signals of how deeply embedded a product has become in someone's routine. And as companies collect this data, they continuously look for ways to improve these metrics. They look for the features that keep people engaged the longest, and which rewards receive the strongest response from consumers, and they double down. And every time they attempt to improve these metrics, whether they are successful or not depends entirely on getting their customers even more hooked. Addiction is no longer just a strategy or a business model. It is now an entire infrastructure that is the backbone of entire industries and drives a large portion of the modern economy. Addiction is something that shapes our entire society. While addiction has been great at driving revenue for businesses, it has had consequences on the rest of the world. When addiction becomes one of the driving forces of the modern economy, the effects don't just stay inside the companies that profit from them. They spill outward into families, homes, communities, and entire societies. People begin structuring their entire lives around the very products companies designed to keep them hooked. Meals become cravings, video games and TV shows become obligations, and habits like gambling start to feel as essential as breathing. The results of this quickly start to show up in other aspects of people's lives as their habits start to consume more and more of their time and money, leaving less resources for the most important parts of their life. And so, in turn, these important things slowly begin to fall to the wayside, from family relationships to work performance, goals, and even physical health. They all begin to become secondary to the addiction that needs to constantly be fed, and habits that started out feeling harmless begin to take control. And the deeper the addiction becomes, the more normalized it all begins to feel, until scrolling on your phone for hours every day, or blowing money daily on sports betting, or binging shows all day begins to feel ordinary. And the effects of individual addiction spread throughout the rest of society. Families begin falling apart and losing time together. Workers lose focus and perform worse. Communities start falling apart and becoming less safe. Kids grow up thinking this is all normal and repeating the same behavior from an even earlier age. And eventually, an entire society begins to decay. But as all of this is happening, the companies behind these systems continue to grow and become more profitable than ever. And while these companies continue to print money, the real cost is paid by everyone else. And this has become increasingly evident in modern society as we're all more addicted than ever before. And this can all be traced back to a single decision, the one companies made when they chose profit over societal excellence. Addiction didn't become a multi-billion-dollar industry that is the driving force behind our modern economy by accident. It became one because companies made a choice. They made a choice to prioritize profit over improving society. They chose to design products that keep people hooked instead of just satisfied. They made a choice to build an entire economy where growth is only possible through increased dependency. And once companies made this choice, they quickly maximized the effects of their decision by creating strong and predictable systems designed to get as many people hooked as possible, and even started utilizing metrics to improve on any weak spots in their strategy. And the strategy these companies have been using has clearly been effective, as these companies are now as successful as ever. But as these companies become more successful, society continues to deteriorate at a rapid rate. We now live in a world where people regularly spend hours every day scrolling on TikTok and playing mobile games so that they can collect their next artificial reward. And if they don't have these habits, then they are sure to be feeding into the addiction economy in some other way, through binging shows on streaming services, gambling, substance abuse, or eating habits. Almost everybody is fueling this economy in some way, shape, or form. But as this business model becomes even more effective, our families, communities, and countries all over become worse than ever before. The effects of all of this are visible when you visit once great cities that have now descended into unsafe metropolises filled with homeless camps, poverty, and drug addiction. And we are now living in a world where multiple generations have lived entire lives centered around feeding their many addictions. And as we head toward the future, the results of this will only continue to get worse. And it will be hard for society to push back, as the companies fueling the addiction economy have all their leverage as they are supplying the products people feel like they need just to function. So the question that leaves us with is this: if addiction is profitable, what incentive is there for companies to ever stop? This was the Visionary Analyst. If you enjoyed this video, please consider helping the channel grow by subscribing, dropping a like on the video, and following me on my social media accounts linked in the description below, so you can be ready for the next video, where we will be covering the catastrophic collapse of the former social media giant, MySpace.